Hey, this is John McGlynn. This is the Dynasty Evaluation Show, and today we have a commissioner-based show. We're going to talk about some things that we all do, we all want to do, and we all should be doing in our Dynasty Fantasy Football League. So if you've got any questions, feel free to throw them on here, and let's get the show started.
McGlynn is in. I repeat, McGlynn is in. Let the fun begin. This is the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with your host, John McGlynn.
Is that Herms?
He got them guests on the Rolodex, stopping by to talk about some Dynasty Superflex. Everybody, yo, commish is in. It's time to sit down to listen to John McGlynn. Yo, who we trading, who we fading, who we getting off the squad. Knowledge never overrated, playing for number one. And yo, McGlynn is in. It's time to let the fun begin. It's the Commissioner Evaluation Podcast with John McGlynn.
So good afternoon, good morning, everyone. We had an exciting weekend of playoff football, some great games. The wife actually sat with me and watched a couple of them, so it was a bonus when me and the wife get to spend some QT together doing things that I like instead of things that she just likes, but you know, that's how it works. What'd you do all weekend, Jeff?
I watched football, and my wife watched a little bit of the NFC contest because those obviously were impacting the Lions. So she doesn't watch them as closely as I did, but that was my weekend. Football. Yeah, I can't believe the Chargers got smoked by the Texans. I never saw that coming. The Ravens beating the Steelers was kind of how do I say, almost predictable, but I thought maybe be a little closer game than what it was. Bills, Broncos. I thought the Broncos were a better team. Not that they're on the same level as the Bills, but I thought the Broncos were a better team. They looked okay at flashes. They had a trick play that kind of kept one drive alive, but other than that, they did absolutely nothing. So the Packers-Eagles game, the Eagles suffered a lot of injuries in that game. I don't know if you watched it or not, but every other play, it was like a mass unit out there. Every play, there was somebody going to the sidelines on both teams. But I mean, when you're the team that's going forward and you lose one of your safeties and the cornerback and the linebacker, and I mean, play after play after play. So there were some of them are serious injuries too. So they're, it might be a big problem going forward for them. If you're going to advance in the playoffs, you want to be as healthy as possible, and that just is not going the Eagles' way. They have enough talent to overcome those injuries, but it is what it is. Commanders and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I wanted Tampa Bay to win this game so bad. I just wanted, but Baker did everything he possibly could, minus that bad handoff. But it is what it is. That's why they play the game. So, yeah, for me, I was kind of rooting for Tampa. I didn't want the Lions to play Washington. I would rather have played Minnesota or the Rams. But it is what it is, and so now we got playoff football for the Lions, and hopefully that gave them enough time to get healthy, because you're talking about, all the injuries. I mean, it's been well publicized, the injuries that the Lions have had on defense. And so hopefully this bye week has given them an opportunity to get right.
Yep. One more game tonight, Rams and Vikings. Vikings at Rams. So, well, kind of at Rams, but at Rams. And then next week we got the Texans, Chiefs, Commanders, Lions, TBD, Eagles, and then the Ravens at Buffalo. That is a game that's the game that's circled on everybody's calendar to watch that game. That's the MVP versus the should be MVP, whichever way you look at it. But I'm the biggest Josh Allen fan on the face of the earth. He's my Dan Marino with legs, so that's why I go. I'm 100% Bills. Chris Joel Smith, thanks for jumping in. You're my weekly woo guy. Woo. Thanks for jumping in, buddy. But today we're here to talk about commissioner stuff. So let's just start out with what makes you want to take on the role of commissioner, Jeff?
Well, for me, it started, many years back out of necessity, because we wanted a league that was conducted the right way, no arguing, no constant on the fly rule changes, and no chasing money. So I talked before on one of your shows back in 2012, we created a league where we decided we were going to lay everything out, do it right, and have everybody involved. And that's kind of how it started. But now I commish because, I get significant personal satisfaction, overseeing leagues that GMs trust.
And I get my own enjoyment of the league, and that enjoyment is enhanced by having a league that is solid. So I mean, there's a lot of personal satisfaction by doing that. And then even when a GM leaves one of our leagues, they've always made it. I just had 2 leave a couple of my leagues this year, and they made it clear it's not because of how the league itself or how the league is run. It was other circumstances in their lives, and I take pride in that.
Oh yeah, I've always been just nothing but a home league kind of guy, and I've joined a handful of I picked up some orphans from leagues that were going on. One of them was a great. That's all I had to do was set a lineup every week, and I walked in the championship. I mean, the team was absolutely stacked. Whoever left this league with this orphan, and I have like 5 first-round picks this year, like 3 second-round picks. I'm not going to be able to cut guys on this team. It's a dynasty league. The team is absolutely stacked. I'm going to walk into 3 of the best rookies coming out this year. Those are the orphans. Like, okay, great. But I noticed that the online leagues are just kind of not as like interactive as in-person leagues. I guess I put it that way. It's when you have a relationship with guys in person, you get to drink beer at the draft and make in-person face-to-face trades every year. I think that brings a little bit more camaraderie, a little continuity to the league. But I'm not saying that online leagues are bad by any means. I mean, 95% of most leagues are probably online leagues anyway, but I'm just finding out that the more and more I join these online leagues, it's kind of like me just joining a league to, and I can't stand League Safe either. I hate putting my money in League Safe where they take they get a piece of the action on everybody else's back just for playing a sport. But it's a necessary evil, I guess. But it's so much fun playing in person. But I get the online thing. People want to play fantasy football. People want to do stuff. But I joined these leagues, and we just had a league that got to the championship game, and nobody knew how to disperse the money. Nobody knew like what was going on. Like, how does it go? That we're voting after the league's over with on, what should we do about divisions? What should we do about this? What should we, and I asked them to see the league started. Hey, you need a co-commission, you need a set of rules. You need, can I help out? No, I got it. And at the end of the year, there was a couple of tiebreaker situations that happened during the playoffs, and they just kind of went like, well, what should we do? How are you going to vote on tiebreaker stuff that happens during the playoffs when the person that's in the playoffs are in the situation with that? And this guy's got a couple friends, or this guy's part of this group or this, site. And he's got a bunch of his friends with him. That's going to sway the votes no matter what. You can't, those things are going to be, we're coming at a point in time now where there should be at least a decent base set of rules glued, how do you call it? Pasted or pinned to everybody's chat board, whether it's on MFL or Sleeper just seems to be the best at the chat board situation. There should be at least a minimum set of rules put out for every league on ties, tiebreakers, the draft order, money, blah, blah, all the rest of stuff like that. I just don't get how people start leagues that are that unorganized still to this day. And then you try to help out, they want no help, and it turns into a cluster, whatever. And then you're like, kind of like, it deters you from joining these leagues sometimes, So I'm in them because I kind of did a favor for a couple people in different leagues. If the team sucked, I jumped on. And rebuilding is fun. Don't get me wrong. I've always been the guy to go, like 100%, like put my pedal to the metal and try to win leagues. Until I started like doing my own orphans or my own team's rebuilds, I'm like, man, this is actually pretty fun not having to worry about it and like sitting back and accumulating talent and trying to make these trades when people are in bad situations in the playoffs. When their guys get hurt, I could trade them one of my older players for one of their younger players who's not playing right now, who's not hurt. And I'm watching the fruits of my labor kind of grow, as it is. So it is fun to do rebuilds, but I just, the rules themselves have to be set in stone in every one of these leagues from the get-go. And it's not fun when it's not.
Yeah, I just jumped into a league this past season where the rules were not well established, and there was some chaos at the end of the year. We'll get into this a little bit later, but I think one of the biggest, it's eliminating chaos in leagues, and rules do that. And like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute. But I every time I'm in one of those leagues or I see something where individuals don't have everything laid out, it reinforces the time and energy that I put into our leagues because we just simply don't have those issues.
Yeah, another thing is, I mean, like I said before, it's kind of one of those things where you have to and you set of rules. But man, it took me like 25 years of problems in my leagues with people having problems, people causing problems, me having to deal with problems, all that kind of stuff to get my rules where they're at right now. So I'm not sure, like, what's the process like? How many times have you amended your set of dynasty rules to make up for problems or things that came up or unexpected situations? Like, how many times have you had to go back? Oh, mine. Whenever there's a situation that comes up that's not in the original rules, we talk about it. Sometimes we vote on it, depending on how important it is, or if it's something that really changes the league in itself. And then if it's voted on or approved, I'll put the date on there, what section it's in, and I'll put it in red instead of black ink in my bylaws, so everybody could see that it was amended, what day it was, and how it got there, passed or voted on or just approved by a commissioner, that kind of stuff. How long did it take you to get your set of rules the way you wanted to? Because it took me about 25 years to get me a pretty decent set of rules.
Well, my league rules still are not where I want them to be because, like you said, every year something arises that makes you realize that the rules need to be tweaked. When I first started the first set of rules I created was that league in 2012. That was, the first set of comprehensive rules, and I did it in about 30 days. But during the course of that season, there were so many corrections that, it morphed a lot over the course of that year. Every year, though, the rules are either modified to clarify a rule, to correct an omission, to remove contradictions, or amend for proposals. I just caught one in one of my league rules where in one section it talks about injured reserve players. Well, in this section, it really matters. It says 2, but in another section, it refers to 1. So these are little things that just need to be corrected, and they're caught often. So literally after all of these years, they're still changing, and we're really looking to kind of overhaul some of our rules in a few of the leagues where we want them to be streamlined or better. Like I said, as they've morphed, we realize, hey, this section really should be over here, and some of it's just some of it's just cosmetic, but there's a lot of things that need. So I would say, the league rules have been modified every year, and they continue to morph. For me, the biggest thing is making sure that you're trying to cover every contingency you can think of. But there are some things you just don't think. Nobody was expecting when the Hamlin injury occurred. No one, the thought of having a game, literally canceled and the ramifications of that on playoff games, that was something I begged someone to show me where they had considered that in their league rules prior to that occurring. So that was something where we had to go on the fly. We had to have discussions with the GMs, and then, and now my league rules cover those contingencies, even though they may never happen again.
So you call your owners, or I guess the owners in my league, I call them owners. You call all your individual, yourself and 11 other people, your GMs in your league. Is that how you refer to them?
We've used coaches. We've used I think we settled on GMs. I think that's kind of the vernacular they wanted to use. And so that's what I have across my leagues. But, some of them consider themselves, annual contributors, and that's it. But, but GMs is what we use.
Yeah, everybody settled on that DeMar Hamlin situation in different ways. We had co-champions in some leagues. Some leagues used the next week's points. Some leagues, had last week's points. Some people use an average of points. We voted on it in every league, and a lot of times we voted on it. But I also voted to make sure that it was just the two people in the championship that had the biggest say, because they're the ones. I don't want them to be screwed over by somebody else's, or had them whoever they're rooting for. It was if the two in the championship had hey, we're just going to call it a tie. Or if they said, hey, we're just going to go by last week's score, or a accumulation, whatever it is, conglomeration of every week's score, it's got a combined total. We'll go by that. Whatever they added up, whatever they wanted to do, whatever the situation was. My job as a commissioner is not to tell them, you're going to do this, or we all said this, you're going to take that. My job as commissioner is to make sure that it's fair and everybody agrees on something, that kind of deal, without getting stuff pushed on their throat or being forced into situations. So I really didn't have a problem, because every one of my leagues had something going on that they did it different. They decided their own fate differently. So I got 2 rings out of it. I won 2 co-championships with 2 guys I've known since kindergarten, because we just said, hey man, let's take both the leagues we're in. We'll throw all the money in one big pot and divide it 3 ways, and we'll just do it that way, and we'll all get rings, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, all right, cool. That worked out fine for me. So, and then I don't know what the situation now with
the Fantrax has an auto sub situation in their league for hockey or for college football. You can auto sub players out, and it's vital for college football because those guys don't tell you 2 minutes before the game starts, hey, Joey Buttafuoco's out this week, so it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. But Sleeper had this option come this year, and I said, man, listen, I'm the commissioner of 8 fantasy football leagues. I'm not going to go back and try to fix 8 situations, trying to set all my 23 lineups and trying to fix all these. I'm like, we're going to give it a year to the dust settles on this stuff, and they had to pull it like twice during the season because of whatever situations. But I wanted to get them to get all the bugs out of it first before. And then this year, I voted on it in all my leagues, and 0 of the leagues approved it. Nobody wanted it, which I always thought was, one team everybody's bitching about it. Like, oh, I'm in so many leagues. We need this. We need this. This lineup setter or the backup or the manager stuff. Stuff. And we voted on it, and it was surprising, like 9-3, like 11-2. I think it was like, it was crazy how much people didn't want it, which surprised me. I was ready to go, like, okay, we're ready for it now. I gave it a whole year to kind of iron out. But how did your league mates go about that? Like changes like that people haven't seen in a while in their dynasty leagues.
Well, we were kind of in a unique situation because we already had what we called fantasy lineup insurance for most of my leagues, and that allowed them to already kind of do that. It was slightly different in the sense that if you had a Monday night player and that player was questionable, you could declare, and you were allowed to do this. I think there were 3 claims you could do each year, so it wasn't each season. So it wasn't like you could do it every single week. But if you had a player and that was questionable on Monday, you could say, hey, I want to declare this player as the substitute if that person doesn't go. And usually there was the small cost of fab or whatever we decided on in each of the leagues. So we already had that kind of in place. So when this was rolled out by Sleeper, we all decided we were just going to hold off, continue to do the fantasy lineup insurance, and then talk about it this off season. So it's a topic of discussion for our winter league meetings that we'll hold in late February. So we'll kind of decide what we want to do with that. If we kind of want to merge the 2 concepts or just abandon the fantasy league insurance or lineup insurance and go with this. That's going to be all up for discussion and eventual proposal in the spring meeting in April.
We got a Brandon Hallam said, I told people Texas will win. Well, a lot of people told me that a lot of put my money here and put my money there all weekend long. So if I listened to all 800 people that told me that this was going to win or that was going to happen, I would have lost a lot of money this week. And a lot of people who I usually don't trust out of my buddies actually did pretty well this week. So I would have got my ass handed to me if I bet on my gut or people I do trust kind of gut, because it was kind of a funny weekend. So, why are different rules specific for every league? Because like I said, I'm in a bunch of leagues, but my home leagues, it just seems like some people, it takes like a month and a half. When you start a brand new home league, we vote on every article, and I think there's 19 articles, and every article's got to be voted on, every subsection of every article about this, that, the other. Is this okay? Is that okay? And somebody always has a problem with something. We have to vote on the individual sub-articles, or not everybody likes the cookie-cutter leagues or right from when I propose a set of rules. What about this, or what about that, or what? I don't like PPR. It should be tiered scoring. It should be, we should be playing each other week 18 instead of week 2, or some of the things I implement is like week 1 division play all, so that I can have the week 2 to 14 is the schedule of the old school schedule where you play everybody once, your division players twice, and everybody else once throughout the season. And your division players play in week 2 and 3 and 4 and 12, 13, and 14, and you play everybody else in the league one time during the season. And there's an extra tiebreaker in week 1 by having a divisional play all where somebody gets a win, loss, and a tie, depending on high score, middle score, or low score. So it's a built-in extra tiebreaker. It's a little bit extra work for me, and I have to make up a whole schedule for everyone in my leagues too. But those are things I like to do. Those things are kind of fluent in all my leagues. It's just kind of the way I like to do things. But what are some things that are you would consider generic, but it's not in all your leagues because some people didn't like it? Like what rules didn't make the cut on every one of your leagues?
Well, first of all, it's impossible to have a one-size-fits-all set of rules for fantasy. Anyone who's trying to use a generic set of rules for multiple leagues, it's like the proverbial square peg in a round hole. You're just going to drive yourself mad, and you're not going to eliminate the issues that you would normally experience, or that a solid set of rules would normally eliminate from you experiencing. So, I mean, I will start with a template, but then, I mean, every league that I run has different rules, and some leagues are similar in nature, but they, every little thing is different. And that's kind of what you were just describing. I think, some of the rules that are kind of the same, but they, like for instance, if you're defining rosters, if you're defining starting lineups, obviously those are going to be different league to league, but the construct of the rules themselves are kind of the same. But when you start getting into things like, standings and playoff seeding and who's making the playoffs, who's not, I mean, again, every league is going to start off differently right from the very beginning, because you're going to have, is it redraft? Is it dynasty? Is it keeper? Is it Devi? Is it campus to Canton? There's all the different formats. I mean, and numerous other ones I haven't even mentioned that will immediately, dictate the type of rules that you're going to need. But after that, when you're in a league that allows your GMs to debate and then vote upon changes to the rules, each league has to have its own standing set of rules, and they are going to be very different. Now, one of the things I try to do, I started working on it, and I had it for a while, and then I didn't update it. Shame on me. Was I had a quick guide, a quick reference guide that listed all the leagues, and so different types of rules. So I have individuals that are in all my leagues. And so for them to be able to look at that quick reference and decide, okay, in this league, this is what happens. In this league, this is what happens. This is the deadline for this. This is when we decide on this is when the cutoff is for any particular rule. Those things are all defined within the rules, and that quick list helps. But if you're saying what's similar in all my rules, I mean, there's a similar format, but every one of them has different language.
Yeah, that language has changed a lot from my first league until now. It's evolved so much that if I looked at the old set of rules, I'm like, man, I'm so glad I avoided catastrophe in some of these leagues without having everything specified. But yeah, I get it 100%. What was the hardest thing to iron out when you have these start outs? What was one of the hardest things that your league members kind of like had a problem with you proposed a rule, or what was something that you thought, man, they're not going to go for this, and people were in favor of it kind of situations?
Oh, there was one rule change that we were going to, everybody was kind of looking at playoffs. So who was going to make the playoffs? So we had divisions, and you and I have discussed this before. I love divisions. I love the rivalries it creates. I think it was you that said you love divisions, correct?
Yeah, that's there's always something that pops up no matter how far away you plan. So
yeah. So with the divisions, the rivalries that are created from that, and we had a wild card system where you had basically 3 teams from each division making the playoffs. They wanted to change from that. So we kind of put out several different proposals, and there were several GMs that were clamoring for this change. Well, when it came time for the vote, the proposal got defeated. And a couple of the people who were the most vocal about the rule change voted against it. And so I asked them precisely why they voted against it. Was there something within the language of the proposal that they didn't like? Was it different one they thought? And it was just, oh no, we changed our minds. And so, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into from the time that someone talks about wanting a proposal to the winter meeting, so we iron out the language, to the spring meeting where we actually vote on it. And there's a lot of time spent on that. And then for individuals who were so vehement, so emphatic about wanting that rule change, to then say, we changed our minds. That was a little frustrating. But again, it's their league, and they vote it down.
Yeah, some of the things I'm going to kind of go over my set of rules here a little bit with you on here. So I have my Article 1 governing agreement. So I say, first of all, the provisions of this agreement supersede any conflicts that Super might have. So Sleeper itself, the site, because that's where my leagues, this particular league happens to be on. So anything that like Sleeper might say, my rules here supersede anything that happens to Sleeper, just so we're on the same page with that. Haven't had anything happen yet. I don't plan anything to happen, but I had to say that just in case. If I have a rule and something says something in my bylaws, this is what we're going by my letter rules. So the date that all this stuff's effective of, that kind of stuff. And then just player ownership, anti-collusion. I think people overestimate collusion in fantasy football leagues. In dynasty leagues, there's always that never veto, don't veto trades. I think people have learned, if you've been in fantasy football long enough, you've learned that there's very, very rarely that somebody kind of pulls the wool over somebody's eyes. And a lot of times it's by accident or, how many trades have you made? Me and you and JT or, our other shows that you're on or other shows that I'm on, we talk about some trades that look like an absolute fleecing. And then 2 weeks later, a month later, the beginning of next year, somebody gets hurt. I talked about with Jonathan Jonathan Brooks this year, where I traded him for a first and Bucky Irving. And I got, I traded for him. I got rid of those two assets. And I'm like, man, this is so bad. I put me in a hole for like 3 years now, not having a running back right now for the playoffs, and B, wasting a first round pick next year, which is like 112 anyway. But I mean, still 112 is still better than a guy sitting on IR for a year and a half, a full year probably. He's not coming back till 2026 probably. Compared to with the injury and what's going on. So anti-collusion. Do you even have to worry about collusion in your leagues anymore? It's kind of one of those things like after people play for 2, 3, 4 years and they see like what could have been with trades. And a lot of the owners, people all want to win money. There's some trades that happen in the playoffs, which I love playoff trades. Everybody loves playoff trades because that's when you got guys by the short and curlies. That's when you can make these trades for, okay, I want a first, a second, and a third for Derrick Henry right now. And it's like, man, this guy, who knows how much time Derrick Henry has left. He was supposed to retire 3 years ago, but he's still, running for 2,000 yards this season. So you don't really have any problems with collusion as far as your leagues are concerned, right?
No. And again, like you said, my leagues are comprised of, I have about 45 to 50 people who are in the very, some of them are only in one league, some of them are in all of the leagues. And so they're either people that I know personally, or they are, a friend of a friend type situation. So, I mean, we have individuals who kind of know each other, and that helps to some degree. We don't have any anti-collusion type rules in the in our league rules. The only thing is there's certain powers that I as commissioner can invoke if necessary. And as if something is so egregious that it's quite clear, hey, somebody just traded their entire roster to somebody for Phillip Rivers, then I might get involved in something like that. But I've never had to get involved in a trade. Some of them are very lopsided, but I'm also not here to dictate to a GM what is good or not good for their team. They're, especially in dynasty leagues, they're running their team how they deem appropriate. And if they think, sending off a stud player for a slew of picks, even if it's lopsided, if they think it's helping their team in the future, then so be it. I'm not there to dictate that. And I certainly don't want our other GMs dictating it. So we don't have those rules. And typically there's kind of a self-policing that goes on. If there's a lopsided trade, you're going to hear, there's a few people I know right away will get on there and they'll make a statement, or they'll use an emoji or something to kind of question the trade. And there might be a little bit of debate, but nobody gets angry. Nobody's losing their mind. And I've just never had that problem. I have never once had to invoke a commissioner action on a trade. And I don't envision that ever happening.
Okay, I have never been a big fan of of taxi squad on my teams. 12 teams, 30-man rosters is deep enough to hold on to rookies for. I'm not really sure what is the in your mind. First of all, do you employ taxi squads? And second of all, what is the benefit of having a taxi squad if you already have large enough rosters to already accommodate the taxi squad itself?
Every one of my leagues, other than my redraft league, has taxi squads. So all my dynasty do. And in other leagues I play, almost all of them have taxi. I agree with you that if the rosters are large enough, that it kind of renders the taxi squad irrelevant. I think that if you have a shallower roster where you need to constantly make moves on the active roster, I think taxi then plays an important role because it's not taking up those spots. I'm in one league where, it's a 12 team. There's 34 person roster. And that's not an IDP. That's just a offensive league. And, we have a 5-person taxi, and I completely agree with you that when it's that deep, it's not really necessary. But I do see a use for it if you have a more shallow roster, because, if you have a player there and that player is holding that spot, and you could really use it for somebody who's, going to help you in the event of injury and so on, it can be beneficial. People seem to like it, so we have it.
On Sleeper, even the taxi squad's max points for are counted on your league. On MFL, they are not. So I understand the benefit of that on MFL. On Sleeper, I think people, a lot of the points for are potential points or max points for on Sleeper. That's if you're going to be adding those points up, what's the point of having a taxi squad then? I really don't understand that. Like, a different story if you got a guy in a taxi squad, your team is good. You got guys in taxi squad. You want your max points for to not be crazy with a good bench. I understand that, but that's why I really don't understand the point of a taxi squad on Sleeper itself. So, I
don't like the fact that Sleeper does that. I wish that they would change that, because that's something that our leagues have talked about doing for, for future draft picks in the rookie drafts, and we can't utilize it because of that. So I keep hoping Sleeper will make a change or offer both or whatever they want to do. But it is a pain, because I have one taxi squad that literally, I'm getting 0 points out of the taxi squad. And so it's, I guess from, that perspective, it's detrimental when you're trying to use that for seeding when it comes to the draft.
Yeah. As long as you guys, I see if you had a 20-man roster, no taxi squad, and you got 5 or 6 rookies on there just clogging stuff up, it's like, I understand that, but got 12 teams, 30 rounds. I don't understand the use for a taxi squad, but especially on Sleeper, I get it.
Well, and one use of a taxi squad on Sleeper that can be helpful is if you're trying to manage a Debbie league, and you're trying to, there's ways to, and I don't remember who, somebody informed me of this a little bit ago, and I thought it was a great idea, but the ability to be able to take players that, will never be on anybody's roster, Phillip Rivers, let's say, and you change the nickname on that player to represent the Debbie player. It's a good way of stashing Debbie players on there and managing them rather than the spreadsheet method. But other than that, like I said, there's pros and cons. I mean, like I said, everybody seems to like it. So we have specific rules for our taxi squad, what you can and cannot do, and when you can do it. So in addition to having the taxi squad, it's not just a free flowing reserve. Like you said, if that's the case, then those players may as well just be on your roster. But you, like, for instance, on almost all my leagues, the taxi, you have to have drafted that player, and you must never have activated that player or traded that player. So again, you draft that player, it goes on your taxi. Once you've done anything else with that player is no longer eligible. And that's one thing that, we wanted to make sure that the taxi squad wasn't just another roster spot.
Yeah, I see people, they're using the kicker spots for Ash and Genty and, McGlynn and all the rest of the players, Shooter Sanders, blah, blah, blah. So I get it. I understand it's a holding spot for Debbie leagues. That's nice to have to see that kind of thing. I get that taxi squad reference, but other than that, I don't really get it. But yeah. Yep. So another thing is IR designations. Do you let guys who, for me, it took me a while to get even players on the PUP to be able to go on IR. I was always just IR. Hey man, if it's IR, it's IR. Anything else, not IR. So we had to vote on that. Now PUP and IR players are allowed on the IR, but I do not allow players who are out, suspended, all the other stuff like that on there. What is your tolerance for the IR?
I think every one of my leagues is out or IR. but nothing else. Obviously, we did have the COVID designation when that was a thing in 2021, but other than that, it is out or IR. So pup list, no. Suspended, absolutely not. We've had these discussions in the past. There were a couple of GMs that wanted it expanded, especially because they were concerned about the questionable designation so late or so close to game time, and that's what we said. Well, you got the fantasy lineup insurance to do that, or to handle that. So that's all we have is out and IR.
I do not like the out being part of the IR situation. That's it's almost like cheating. And then how many spots do you have at IR? I had 10 during COVID, moved down to 5, and there's plenty of leagues I had more than 5 IR spots that I could have used more designations for this year. But I also go on the league website and find anybody else is on IR and put them on my IR. I always want the max. If I have a 30-man roster and 10-man IR, you better believe I'm going to have a 40-man roster because every one of my IR spots is going to be filled up, by that goes. But how many IR spots do you have?
In my leagues, in the leagues I commish, I have one that has 3. I have one that has 2. I have one that has 3. And then the other 4, I think, are 5.
Man, you have to have at least 5. I honestly considering just moving all my stuff to 10, leaving it there, because when you get these leagues, these years that have these, major injuries, or how many guys towards the end of the season, there was a lot of IR designations going on, a lot of IR. So I have leagues where I have all 7 of my spots filled up, and I still have 4 or 5 more guys, losing Trevor Lawrence and Dak Prescott, and half my Jonathan Brooks and everybody else. They filled up fast this year, man. I really got put in a pickle with. You can't cut these guys. It shouldn't be fair to have those guys on your roster.
I have I'm in an IDP league. It's not a league I commish. I'm in an IDP league where we had, I think, 8 IR spots, and I had every one of those filled, and I still had another 7 or 8 guys in IR designation on my active roster. So, yeah, I mean, a certain number. We've talked about expanding it. No one seems, really inclined to do so. I understand what you're saying, and there's definitely a benefit to having those additional spots. But again, that's where we discuss these things during the winter meetings and throughout the season, and some will make their thoughts known, and then it usually doesn't go anywhere. I don't even remember the last time we had a vote on the expansion of IR slots.
Yeah. When you get into, it used to be a big waiver wire system back in the day, and some people still have it, but now pretty much a lot of it's transferred to a free agent fab budget. Do you have 2 separate fab budgets, one for the off season, one for the in season, or do you just have, like right now when my league started from scratch, you get everybody gets $1,000, and it is what it is. That's what you get. It's $1,000. I like it better than just having 100 because you could bet like 463 to 461. It's just a little bit more kind of like a little bit more pain when you lose by $1 in a $450 budget instead of like $42 to $41. What is your fab situation? How do you run that?
So ours is just for the entire season. We roll the season. All my dynasty leagues have all been rolled already to 2025. At that time, we reestablish the fab. One of the things that, I think all of them are set at 200. We've talked about expanding it. There was one league where I thought we were going to go to 1,000, and then it was a 6-6 vote, and our votes all have to be majority in order to make the change. So it was 6-6, so it was defeated. The one thing I know we're discussing this off season is there's a proposal in one of my leagues, 2, where we're going to talk about the ability to roll over, half of your fab budget that you leave from the prior year to the new year. So if you've got 200, you spent 100, you can roll 50 over to the following year. The reason why is fab has become, we have some people who just blow through their fab right away. And we actually have trades that involve fab. And so it's, that person will start trading draft picks to get fab just so they can try to improve that season. We have some people who are hyper active, this is the way I'll describe it. And so fab some leagues Fab may not be as valuable. In these leagues, Fab is very valuable, and so they want the ability to be able to carry that over because they want the ability to be able to trade it to those hyperactive GMs.
Yeah, I try trading Fab, but you're very rarely. One guy in my league, and out of all my leagues, one guy first waiver wire this. No matter how bad the player is, no matter how good the player is, $1,000, bam, he's out of Fab for the year. I don't know why he does it. No idea. It just people have their own. He doesn't give a shit about Fab. So it is good for him. But other than that, you get $1,000. You could trade Fab. There's been Fab traded plenty of times in my league. So I get that. It's 100% tradable asset for sure. And I employ that strategy a lot whenever I possibly can. I had $300 or $400 Fabs to a lot of trade offers I send out just in case, but because you never know. Some people like Fab more than other people, and you never know what it takes to get that trade over the edge. So why wouldn't I do that? Fab is one thing that I never really cared about that much, but some people find it more important to me. So it's definitely, $1,000 just seems to be the way to go. So, I had another situation where this is like the fourth person, and I had another person pass, deceased in one of my leagues. I don't. How do you rectify that situation when you unfortunately lose a coveted member of your league to death? Because it happens. We're getting older now. None of us are getting younger. The accidents happen. It is what it is. So what goes about there? Just recommended by somebody? Is it somebody you have to approve? Is it kind of the whole league has to vote on? Like how do you do that?
Are you talking about off season or during the season?
Either one. Like, people just don't die during the off season. So that's at some point in time, you have to, I can recommend people like when it happened in my leagues again, just it wasn't one of my home leagues. The last three were in my home leagues. The last one was not one of my home leagues. And it was a friend of a friend of a friend of somebody else that was in the league already. And it, so thank God it's a 32 team league. So people don't take it as seriously. But it does happen. I had to go around and propose an owner in my leagues. That happened when we lost players. Mike Tagliere was one of them. James Catullus was one of them. Dave Schmidt was one of them. So it's one of those things where the show has to go on. Unfortunately, nobody wants to see it happen, but it does happen. So we just I let everybody bring in whoever they want to. Any suggestions, anybody, and then we'll go from there and kind of vote on stuff. A lot of times. Twice it's just my recommendation of like, hey, I could bring this guy in. What do you guys think? And nobody had a problem with it. So one time we had 2 or 3 people kind of, being proposed to take over, and we had a little bit of a vote, but it was kind of like, yeah, okay, well, that's who we brought about. But I'm not sure if that situation came up or has come up. How would you rectify that situation?
So I have a section in my league rules. I think, in fact, it's section 18 in most of my league rules called departing and replacement teams, and it discusses the process for nominating replacement GMs. So if somebody has someone who's interested in the league, then they can nominate them. If nobody else is nominated, then typically that person will get that role. If there's multiple people who are nominated for the league, then typically we'll do a league vote. We tried to do a wait list for a while. And unfortunately, every time I would do the wait list, I'd roll back to the wait list and nobody was interested. So we just there's a very formalized process in the league rules. Most of the time, the league GMs just kind of leave it to me to try to find that out. And then I kind of bounce it off them. I just replaced one vacancy in one of my leagues yesterday with someone. I shouted out to everyone, hey, I got a replacement. Do you want to discuss it? Everybody said no. So, okay. So the person is invited. So, but I have very explicit rules within the rules in case, if anyone had any concerns or questions, then we would follow those rules. But if somebody were to depart during the middle of the season, typically we would try to find a replacement to take over the orphan. We would follow the same type of rules. And if we couldn't do that during the season, then it becomes, we've never had that situation occur, but if it did, then I, as commissioner, would would set the lineups based on there would be no trading, no waiver wire, no fab pickups unless there was a necessity, and then it would be whatever sleeper designated as the highest rated player or the highest projected points would go into the starting lineup. So there's a method to that. Never had it happen, so don't need to, I don't have can't comment on how well it would work, but that's kind of what we do. Now, we did have two in the league that was formed in 2012. Two of the founding members actually both passed away within 6 months of each other, and they were younger members of our league. And what we did for them was we changed the name of the trophy to their names, memorial trophy. So person A, person B memorial trophy, and kind of in recognition of them. But like I said, we do have a set process in the rules for departing and replacement teams. It quite honestly, it doesn't get followed because everybody just kind of leaves it to me to do it.
Yeah, no, I get it. We have Article 9, voluntary withdrawal or involuntary termination. Involuntary termination, etc. Where some of the rules are just fails to pay the league dues or any financial obligation on time, consistently fails to participate in league activities and responsibilities, meaning never shows up to drafts, things like that, consistently fails to submit a starting lineup, undermines league rules, league play, commissioner instructions, agrees to collusion as defined in Article 3, upon expulsion, a member of involuntary termination membership, new owner shall immediately be chosen and approved by the league via vote. So we have there's 4 sections of that article about replacing a member. So we kind of had that just from experience, like what to do in those situations. But I think the online league has a lot more turnover than in-person league. So that's the only time we've really had situations like that is when we had a deceased member. So it's been nice as far as consistency in leagues. And I think my youngest league is 5 years old now. So it's a lot of them have gone quite a while, pretty consistent. So it's been pretty nice to have that stability, League fees. How do you, every year, do you just kind of like, hey guys, you want to keep it at $40, $50, $100, $300, whatever? Do you vote on, do people, like we had one league, we voted from 75 to like 125 this year. It was one league that we found out was my cheapest league by far, but they wanted to go up to 125 and I'm like, okay, cool. You know what? And I'm like, we'll do that. How often do you vote on like monetary changes for the league?
It's not frequent, although we had a couple of dynasty leagues that added some of the side pots that you and I have talked about in the past. So last off season, there were proposals that address that. It's usually not, and it's not something that I raise on a year-to-year basis. If somebody else has something they would like to add or something they would like to change, then that is discussed in the winter meeting and then proposed in the spring meeting. But it doesn't happen that often. The one thing that I will present to them, however, is the trophy reserve. So we have what's called the trophy reserve, and it's predominantly meant to handle the shipping charges. Because I have a couple leagues where we have people scattered. I mean, again, these are people we know or 2 degrees removed, but they're scattered all across the country. So someone wins the trophy, you got to package it up, ship it out. And I was eating those costs for a while, and then decided I wasn't going to eat those costs any longer. So we've created trophy reserves. And so for a while, shipping was getting a little bit outrageous. And so we had to adjust the reserve. So I'll present that. They have to vote on it. And we kind of go from there. But other than that, it doesn't happen that frequently that changes in fees are proposed. But it is a league vote, no matter what.
Yeah, I buy rings for everybody. They were $22 when I first started buying them from Etsy. Then they went to 25, 27. Now they're 30 this year. Then you get better options that are more than 30. Now they're like 39 if you want to get like some different options on there. So I think this year what I might do is just try and tell I have a financial secretary for my league too. So I might tell him like, hey, $2 from each person has to go towards the league trophy from now on, that kind of deal. So yeah, I like doing it at first, but yeah, now there's more leagues going on. And with co-champions in 1 year and a couple leagues, because of DeMar Hamlin, I ended up buying 13 rings the 1 year. I'm like, oh shit, this is starting to get a little bit deep, So
I get it.
Well, the one league we're in, we everybody wanted a top tier trophy, so we or I should say top tier. I think that's actually a company out there. So they wanted a really nice trophy for the league, and so we went out and I purchased a very expensive trophy that came out of my pocket, and then we were trying to recover it. That fund is still in a deficit balance. I'm not sure if I'll ever get my full amount of money back between shipping and everything, because it's a very heavy trophy as well. So it shipping it from here, say, to California is not inexpensive, but again, I'm not in it. I'm in this. I'm in fantasy, and I commission these leagues for my own enjoyment. So if there's some cost out of pocket, that doesn't bother me at all.
Chris Joel Smith, I forgot the Babies and Boomers League is going. It's year 3. I thought it was year 4. Well, I guess we're in year 3. So yeah, Chris got me. I got that's my newest one. That's probably my most fun one. It's got a lot of good people in that league. A lot of great fantasy analysts. It's funny how when you find people in the area, guys you can get. From I just said, hey, who wants to join the league? So I got Brian Watson from Wisconsin, Adam Hutchinson from Football Guys, Nate Powell from DLF, Chris Joel Smith. I'm not sure what he writes for. Lucas Perfetti does Bear stuff. JT Orange, he's everywhere. Does IDP, does Fantasy and Frames, does all that kind of stuff. Zach Pulowski writes for a couple places. Joe Herf writes for the Bears. Nick Script writes for P2W Fantasy. Pat Fitzmaurice is where the Fantasy Pros. It's pretty nice when you can fill a league with a bunch of players like that to get in there, and experienced players who have their own stuff going on. It's one of my favorite leagues that I just started. Like, this is year 3, I guess, for that one. So, but when we get together, all of my leagues are fun. But it's pretty cool when that league's a little more competitive than not so many home run swingers in that league. I'd probably put it that way. A lot of guys who are kind of on the ball. So. What is you don't charge for transaction leagues, do you? Like, some people charge for trades or waiver pickups, things like that. That's all fake money that's on the website, right? I used to do that where I would charge $5 per trade for each team, and then $1 for each drop, $1 per each pickup, and I'd tally it up at the end of the year, and that money would go towards the draft party. We'd all get together, and a beer and a food and everything will all come out of that, But then it's going to be too much money. And then I and the most active people sometimes have like $240 tip in, and other people don't trade at all. And they get maybe 1 or 2 drops, and now they're paying $4. It's like, man, this is crap. So you don't charge for transactions like in real monetary money, do you?
Yes, the one league from 2012, we do have a fee for trades and a fee for ads. We don't charge for drops. And then we have a fee per loss. So, which, everybody has complained about over the years, and nobody has ever voted to or proposed to change it. So it's just one of those rules that nobody likes, but nobody wants to bother changing it. I will say that, yeah, it does add up. We have one person in that league who is, I'm a pretty active person in that league, and this guy doubles me every year in transactions. In fact, the one year I think he finished second place, and he still owed the league money because he had so many transactions. So that's the only league that we have that. Like I said, I get complaints, but nobody ever motions to move it or wants a proposal for it. So we've continued to do it every year.
Yeah, another thing in the offseason I like to do is we do a rookie. I'm sorry. We have 4 individual divisions, so we do a division draft every year where all the division winners get to draft their opponents. And it ended up being one of the funnest things to do in the off season, because if you get picked first, you're the shittiest team in the league. And it's the fourth overall pick, and it goes to a snake draft. So the top 4 guys, whoever the least powerful division winner gets to pick first. And then it's snake draft 1 to 4, 5 to 8, across. But whoever gets picked 1 is usually that's the league shame prize kind of. And it adds a lot to, home league BS when you're at the draft, like kind of doing those things. So it's fun. And then, like I said, I redo the rules every year. I redo the schedule every year. And then we have rookie draft order determination. the toilet bowl is a draft lottery system. We have a lot of things that it's a lot of stuff for me to do as commissioner, but I love doing this stuff. So what things do you find unique to your league that you don't see in a lot of other leagues, you don't hear about in a lot of other leagues?
Well, one league that I'm no longer a commissioner. This was my last year, but I was commissioning a work league. It was a for fun work league. And the one thing that we did there, we had 2 conferences, each with 2 divisions. So 3 teams per division. And every year, the assignment to the divisions would change based on the previous year's performance. So what it basically did was it always ensured that half the playoff field would be teams that made the playoffs the year before, and half the playoff field would be teams that did not make the playoffs the year previous. That was something that they wanted, and they seem to like it. And I've not seen that anywhere else. I'm sure it's out there, but that was something I felt was kind of unique. The fantasy lineup insurance was something that I found that was unique. But as far as off season, if you were talking about off season, I think the one thing that we do that a lot of other leagues don't do is we try to keep communication going. We try to keep the collaboration and the camaraderie going by conducting the winter and spring meetings. So, where a lot of leagues might kind of die off and you may not hear from some people, say in February and March, we're having conversations about potential proposals, about changes in the league, things people liked and didn't like. We kind of have that dialogue, so it keeps some people engaged. Some people do still disappear, but and the winter meeting is not a mandatory meeting; it's a voluntary. But it allows the league to continue to interact with one another. It also allows us to get some of the league, the league business conducted in an organized fashion. Then we roll around to the spring meetings, which usually occur right around the NFL draft time, and that's when we actually vote on proposals and we formalize anything that needs to be finalized for the upcoming season, which is ideal because shortly thereafter, my first Dynasty League draft begins May 1. The slow draft for that begins May 1. And so all of that stuff is put to bed and ready to roll for that draft. I have a draft that starts May 1, one that starts June 1, one that starts July 1, and then one starts August 1. After the other thing that we have in a league is we have a claim. It's a Dynasty League, but we have a twist on it in that so many of your players, you have to you can protect so many of your players, most of them, but several players you leave unprotected, and then there's a claim period. So if I have 5 players that I do not protect on my roster and someone else wants to claim that player, they may claim them, and then I get a compensatory pick at the end of the second round of the rookie draft for that player. Now, some people have done unique things like, oh, hey, I've got 3 defenses for whatever reason. They have 3 defenses on their roster and they won't protect them. There's some rules that we have in there, but I find that unique. I don't know that I've seen that anywhere else. It's like a keeper twist on the Dynasty format.
Do you get penalized if you drop somebody and he gets picked up by somebody else? Like if somebody picks up one of your players, you don't have to give up picks yourself, right? You just lose your player and that's it. But other people get penalized a second. Other people get awarded a second round pick, like a late second round pick. I guess I'm just asking, like, there's no other penalty in that for losing players besides losing players, correct?
Oh, no. So if you claim a player from me, you'll get that player. You have to drop somebody. You do have to take if you take that player, you have to put that player in protected status, and then you have to move one player. You have to drop a player and move a player into unprotected status. So to answer your question, yeah, there's a little bit of a penalty. You're going to have to drop somebody from your roster if your roster is full. And then you have to move in. If you've claimed somebody, you must put them in protected status. Now, the one thing we do have is you may only claim one player and you may only have one player claimed from you. So if you claim from me, somebody else can't come along and claim one of my players. I can still claim from somebody else. But once you've claimed from me, then the rest of my players are off limits. That's kind of how that works. And like I said, we have, but again, there's no penalty other than you having to drop a player. I would get the compensatory round 2 pick, but you don't give up any picks of your own.
Man,
we
that's
had that before, and nobody was doing it. As soon as we changed that rule so that you're not giving them a pick and I just get a compensatory pick, now we have activity. We probably get 2-3 claims a year.
I was about to say that's kind of I'd be kind of pissed if I was like pick 301 and like all of a sudden like 7 late second round picks were awarded because people pick people up. I'm like, damn it, that's a lot of injection. I depending on who it is. I mean, obviously you're not protecting somebody for a reason because it's somebody who's not. How do you establish who the protected players are? You put like a symbol on their roster spot, or is you put something you pin something to the board? Like, how does that happen?
You go into each player that's unprotected. You go to this leagues and sleeper. You add to the nickname in all caps unprotected.
Oh, okay. Very good.
So anybody can look at anybody else's roster and easily see who is unprotected. I used to do a spreadsheet and post it, and I got lazy and said no. You can scan a roster and see who's there.
Very good. Well, that's good. It gives a little bit of incentive for people to be more active too. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right. And then just as we go, a couple more things that I kind of have, like playoff seedings, with make sure that with divisions, try to make sure that people just it's points. People who score the most points are always getting a playoff spot. However you set up with divisions or non-divisions or wins or losses, try to make it where you get people who get points to get in the playoffs, because everybody's got that team who played the highest, lost to the highest score every week in a row for the last first 5 or 6 weeks of the season and didn't make the playoffs now. So try to get the playoff, whether it be 1. I do all 4 division winners, and 2, the last 2 are highest scores. So I think that puts the best 6 teams in the playoffs itself. How to break the money up. Make sure you have a good set of tie-breaking rules. Make sure that during the playoffs, everybody has to put like their tiebreaker on the message board saying, I want, whoever it may be, Antonio Gibson or a backup quarterback. It could be anybody on your roster, but if there's a tie, and your opponent puts Antonio Gibson or, whoever, it's make sure Zach Moss, whatever, just make sure that you put your guy on there. If you don't call tiebreaker as a tie and your opponent does, you lost that game. So, excuse me, there's levels of tie-breaking stuff too with the, if you're both your tiebreakers tie after that, then it's your entire roster. Then it's how many points you gave up the entire season, things like that. There's a whole list of tiebreakers just in case. And it ultimately comes down to a coin toss at the end. So, but that's anything else I missed or anything else you could think of or things like that you want to talk about as far as commissioner stuff's concerned?
Well, I do want to comment on the tiebreaker. That's one thing that we do have in you were talking about, things that weren't in your rule books early on. Again, as we first developed the rules, we noticed that we didn't have anything that was addressing playoff game tiebreakers, and so that got corrected. And what we introduced, and now it's in every one of my leagues, is there's a 7 point tiebreaker now for playoff games. So you and I are in a playoff game, we're in the championship, whatever, and we happen to somehow tie, which is difficult now with such fractional scoring. But if we tie, then we go through one of them is I think there's I'm trying to remember. I think one is higher seed. Whoever's a higher, basically the goal is to win 4 of the 7 points. So one is whoever's the higher seed gets a point. Whoever has the overall roster score for playoff game gets a point. Optimal lineup score for playoff game gets a point. Total season points is a point. Best 1 player score for playoff game is a point. Total TD scored by lineup for playoff game is a point, and regular season head-to-head record is a point. So that was something, at first they were trying to find something that was going to work. And I finally said, why don't we just include it all? So we did that. And early on that settled, I think I've had to use this twice to settle playoff contests. Like I said, it's not as likely to be needed now with fractional scoring. But back then when we were, especially before we moved to Sleeper and we were on ESPN,
yes,
it was used twice.
Yes, sir.
But as far as other things, one of the things that you had talked about was, or that you had mentioned was, starting when you have a startup and what's the hardest thing to iron out. And I think one of the things you asked about was whether scoring is the hardest thing to deal with. And I think it's definitely one of the hardest aspects of a startup, especially in IDP leagues. I find that the scoring for IDP, especially as it relates to linebackers, has been problematic. I really wish that Sleeper had the flexibility to be able to do positional scoring when it comes to IDP. But I also think there's a lot of things. I've seen debates occur on, hey, the league type. Hey, this is going to be a dynasty. And then somebody wants to make it a Devy. Then somebody wants to make it an IDP. And so those discussions ensue. The roster sizes, lineup positions, fees. These are all things that are debated. I think these are all things that have been problematic. But scoring is definitely the one I think is most hotly debated. And then for me as commissioner, finding GMs that we believe will be dedicated to the league can be problematic as well, especially if we can't get the core group that we have now interested in being in that league. But if I were to run a startup today, there would be a brief discussion and then the framework established. Once that framework is established, after that, it would require voting to it would require a vote on any subsequent changes from there. I've had that happen where debates have just gone on and on and on. It's like, hey, at some point we need to establish this league and actually conduct a draft. So I think that's one of the things is just, setting, it's like planning to plan. Make sure you have a plan for your startup before you even get in there, and then set it into motion. And after that, the people that join vote.
Yeah. Yep. I get it. That's how, just get 12 interested people together, vote on everything. And then when the people vote on an entire list of rules and scoring, and they feel like they've already know the rules, or comfortable with the league itself. They feel like they had a part in like starting this league. So yeah, I get it 100%. There's a feeling of like togetherness now that you've already went through the trenches together of starting a league together. It's not easy to start a league with all the rules involved now with, people see like mine or your league bylaws and like, holy shit, what the hell is this? I'm not reading this whole manifesto. And I'm like, well, you know what? When something happens, I can always go to Article 13, Section 7. And that's why this is that. That's the most important thing for me. So, Jeff, where can everybody find you at? What's going on? I don't know if you got anything coming down the pipeline or that kind of stuff. You seem to be a regular contributor on my show now, which is welcome. I like that you're on here a lot, so I'm going to keep asking until you say no. Unfortunately, you're stuck with me. But what else you got going on?
Well, one, I absolutely appreciate you inviting me, and I will. I'm more than happy to be here anytime you need me. So I do have some things that I'm trying to work on. I've mentioned it a couple times, but I'm going to just kind of keep it quiet because it seems to not coming to fruition at this point. But hopefully, I'll be on a few podcasts on my own here in the near future. But for now, you can find me on X at ffcommish_YS and Blue Sky at ffcommish_ys.bsky.social, I think is what it is. And but other than that, I look forward to our next discussion.
Fantastic. I'm going to try and get some rest before I start my midnight shift tonight. So thanks for coming on. And I look forward to seeing you, and good luck in the playoffs. Let's go next Monday, Notre Dame. We got a lot of it's next Friday, right? Is it next Friday or next Monday? No, it's next Monday.
Monday. Well,
let's go
I'm
Irish.
on your side on this one.
Yeah, it's I think 95% of the country's on our side with this 90%. Just Ohio is the only team that wants Ohio State to win. So let's go Irish. But other than that, let's go Buffalo Bills. Let's go Lions. Let's go. Let's get them to the Super Bowl. That'd be a great matchup. So thanks for everybody watching Dynasty Evaluation. John McGlynn 75 on X, YouTube, Fantasy and Frames, all the good stuff on Fantasy and Frames, all the great content they put out here. There's a show every day of the week. Rookie stuff's coming on. Rookie stuff's about to come down the pipeline. An entire offseason of goodness coming right your way from Fantasy and Frames. Talk to you later.